So the image behind the map, it's a watercolor that I painted myself. I wanted to incorporate that artistic side of Ireland and bring it into the data side as well.
This is impressive. The moment you told me it was watercolored by you, this brings a whole different perspective. And I suppose the wavy lines at the left-hand side is also hand painted by you.
Yeah, that's Celtic knot style design, inspired by, again, from that medieval period where Ireland was reproducing a lot of work in the monasteries. It's very popular in Irish culture. You'll see a lot of this style of knot work, but I think it's beautiful. So I wanted to incorporate that as well as just a little side design. But yeah, it's hard to paint because of all the overlapping and underlapping.
So hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Viz. Today I have Trea in the house to talk about her Ireland literature landscape viz, which is very interesting if you're into history and stuff like that. So over to you, Trea, to give a short intro about yourself.
Thank you. So hello everyone, my name's Trea McElhone. I'm a data analytics and engineering consultant based over in London at the Information Lab. Although if you can't tell from my accent, I'm originally from Ireland. My journey with Tableau first started almost about 2.5 years ago, although it really doesn't feel that long, I think. I came from an academic background, so I had been used to using a lot of ugly charts. So whenever I found Tableau, I was thrilled. It was a great day for me. I was like, finally, I can utilize both my creative and my technical skills. Because obviously on Tableau Public, there's such a range of beautiful, creative, and interesting work.
So looking at your Tableau Public profile, you have quite a bit of Makeover Mondays, and you also have quite a bit of vizzes done on Ireland. This viz that we're going to talk about today is not your first Ireland focus viz. So talk us through a little bit on how the idea came about to do on the literature landscape and how you came about the design.
So essentially, St. Patrick's Day was coming up, and I realized that there weren't an awful lot of visualizations about Ireland on Tableau Public. And I thought I'll do a nice viz themed around Irish culture. And then as well, whenever I do hear about Irish themed viz, I think a lot of the times they're kind of focused around alcohol consumption and partying. And I guess the more American view of St. Patrick's Day. And having been raised in Ireland and been very involved in Irish culture, I feel like Ireland has such a rich culture to share with everyone, specifically around literature. So I was like, oh, I really want to do a viz that kind of celebrates Irish culture. I spent a little bit thinking about ideas because a couple of weeks beforehand I was like, oh, I want to do a viz for St. Patrick's Day. Don't really have the time yet. I need to start thinking up ideas. A couple ideas ran through my head. But again, for Ireland, there's not a lot of nice, ready data sets out there aside from your typical demographic ones. And I didn't really want to do something more demographic based because Ireland's such an artsy culture, I would say, very creative and focused around storytelling. So obviously there's not a lot of great data to go with for that. But yeah, the inspiration came to me because I'm from a really tiny part of Ireland up in the north, and it's actually an area where a very famous poet called Seamus Heaney is from. He actually won the Nobel Prize for Literature a while back, and he passed away a few years ago. I'm really inspired by this poet, and he's my favorite poet. And I thought a lot of his work is centered around the place in Ireland that we're from. That's kind of where the idea came from, to look at famous Irish literary people. And I wanted to look into whether or not they too have been inspired by their home places and whether that's made its way into their pieces of work and literature. A bit of a long-winded story, but that's how I got
No,
it.
that's perfect. That's really amazing. I love listening to stories like that because everyone tells story differently. And for you, it's all about bringing that Ireland's culture into the world. So just for the sake of our Western and the Asian audience, what is St. Patrick's Day?
So St. Patrick's Day is, I guess, the feast day or the celebration day for St. Patrick, who is the patron saint of Ireland. Way back many years ago, he was brought to Ireland as a slave and he was a shepherd for a while. It's a very long-winded story, but essentially he brought Christianity to Ireland. However, as Ireland moves further to modern day, it's become more of a day that celebrates Irish culture. So I think that's basically what St. Patrick's Day is. And I guess with a lot of Irish immigration throughout the world, it's been brought to a lot of different countries, particularly America. I think it's a big one. I would like to clarify as well for American audience, it's St. Patty's Day, not St. Patty's Day. just so we've got it out there. But yeah, typically in Ireland, it's celebrated a little bit differently than overseas, because I know a lot of people over here like to go out and party and drink. That does still happen in Ireland, but we have lots of things. There's like you climb a mountain that St. Patrick herded sheep on and your bare feet, that kind of thing. And you go to parades where there's lots of people dressed up, artistic celebrations, and you listen to traditional music, that kind of thing. But I think what I liken it to, because part of my family is also Chinese, the parades for St. Patrick's Day remind me of the Chinese New Year parades, but with an Irish spin on it.
That's really cool. You have the best of both worlds when it comes to celebrations. So I noticed in your viz, you talk about Ireland being the land of saints and scholars. I did a little research into that, and it all started from the medieval ages. And it's interesting because I think a lot of the medieval movies or TV shows that we see these days are probably inspired by the stories from Ireland. Like you have your famous poet who has the translation for Beowulf, which has been made in the movies, TV shows, and stuff like that. Him fighting a dragon lays the foundation of a lot of medieval stories like Game of Thrones, which is one of my favorite ones. Fun fact, I was in Dublin last year and I went over to the Game of Thrones studio tour in Belfast.
Yeah, Banbridge, I know it. Yeah, they filmed 15 minutes from where I live, and my dad
Wow.
was extra in it.
Yeah, I had so much fun at the studio tour because they had all of the life-size exhibits and all the backstories around how they made the show, the writers, the costume designers, and all. So it's really interesting because I think it all boils back to Ireland's literature and the rich history of it. So talk to us a little bit on your favorite poet. Like, what is it that inspired you, your favorite works, and what you have learned from him and stuff like that?
To be honest, my first experience with him was through school, which is a little bit sad that my favorite poet is a poet that I studied in school. But once I found out that he was from my local area, I was quite excited because I'm from such a small rural area. No one famous is from there. Once I started reading his work and I guess delving into it, it's a lot about our local area. I think there's blackberry picking is one of my favorites. And it reminds me a lot of my childhood whenever I used to roam around the countryside and pick blackberries with my siblings. So I guess it's a lot of nostalgia and the beauty of the landscape, particularly for Northern Ireland, where we've had a bit of a troubled past. I think it's nice that Seamus Heaney kind of was able to still experience such beauty around him in the natural landscape and share that with others during a time when Northern Ireland wasn't that greatly represented in media.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Anything from our childhood is very impactful because it forms the foundation of our growing up years and all. I remember just sitting down with my grandparents and they would tell me stories about the World War and stuff like that. Every era has stories of their own and we can learn a lot from them. I think you touched a very important point there that, Seamus was able to find the beauty in troubled past. And I think that is something worth celebrating because if you're able to find the shining light in dark times, then it makes life worthwhile living.
Yeah.
So in making this viz, I noticed that you also have that really nicely designed map and it's from Mapbox. Was it difficult to get the design right? Because I know you use green, which is your national color as well.
So the image behind the map, it's a watercolor that I painted myself, which was a little difficult to get the scaling right. I had to print out a 2-scale version of the map and trace that with a penknife to get it exactly right. I wanted to incorporate that artistic side of Ireland and bring it into the data side as well. Clearing that, it took a little bit of time and sizing And if you don't look too closely, the lake at the top where I live is a little bit off. But I think it worked for that aspect. But yeah, I chose green for the Emerald Isle.
This is impressive. The moment you told me it was watercolored by you, this brings a whole different perspective. And I suppose the wavy lines at the left hand side is also hand painted by you.
Yeah, that's Celtic knot style design, inspired by, again, from that medieval period where Ireland was reproducing a lot of work in the monasteries. A famous particular piece is called the Book of Kells, and it has a lot of the style of Celtic knot, but it's very popular in Irish culture. You'll see a lot of this style of knot work, but I think it's beautiful. So I wanted to incorporate that as well as just a little side design. But yeah, it's hard
Nice.
to paint because of all the overlapping and underlapping.
I love that. I go over to Dublin like once a year, but
Mm.
I've never really had the chance to explore the history, culture, and literature within Ireland. So, what would you recommend for someone to do to kind of soak themselves in all this cultural richness?
Well, I would definitely recommend the Book of Kells, which is in Dublin. You can go and visit that. There's an Irish Museum of Immigration based in Dublin that I'm quite keen to go to, which I also think would be particularly interesting for people whose families descend from Ireland. They want to see the journey that their family went through. Focuses a lot around Irish history. But to get more involved with the culture, I would recommend visiting a pub while they have traditional music playing. It's called a session, and I really enjoy those. Sometimes there'll be Irish dancers as well. I think that's the best way to experience how real Irish people would experience Irish culture. Even just going to the little villages and things like that. I know they have some up in the north where I'm from, where basically it's a village from the 1800s with the little cottages, and you can visit and see how people live their life. Those are all my top recommendations. Also, maybe try some of their baked goods. We're not a culture known for our cuisine, but some of it's good.
You're known for drinking. That one as well. Whenever I go over, it's always drinking with my colleagues and all. Like, so I really want to do something this time round. I'll check out the recommendations that you put across, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Good.
Sounds good. So, what would you say is the most challenging part in getting this viz together?
I would say maybe the data, because in all honesty, I think this was one of the more simpler vizzes that I've created, but perhaps that was why it was so well received, because it was simple. There's not a lot of complicated work going on behind the scenes, but because of the lack of data that exists about Ireland, I had to create my own data set in Excel, which was not ideal. Normally, I like to have the data nice and prepared for me. So I researched some of my favorite authors from Ireland. I asked for thoughts from some of my colleagues at work, other Irish people that I know, and kind of asked, can you give me any suggestions of influential Irish authors to include, or people associated with Ireland? Because I don't think all of the authors I've included were particularly born in Ireland, and some perhaps moved away later in life. Then I gathered latitudes and longitudes for their birthplaces. I then went in and wrote some short descriptions for each person. So all of the descriptions had to be written by me. So take them all with a little pinch of salt based on my research on the internet and what Wikipedia told me. But yeah, I would definitely say that was the most challenging part, trying to get all the data coupled together.
Yeah, that's always the hard part, getting the data. Kudos to you to get all this, because it's really not easy scouring the internet and talking to folks just to get this data set in place. I think it turned out really, really great. So looking ahead, is there anything that you're working on that you want to tease the audience a little bit? Maybe another Ireland focused viz?
I don't know, maybe. I've recently upskilled in a little bit more data engineering skills because I wanted to test some of my technical expertise and challenge myself in that sense. So ideally, I want to try out something that utilizes both. I've got a couple of ideas, but I'm not quite sure yet. I think sometimes some of the things I find interesting, other people don't find as interesting, like the London Tube Network. That's a favorite topic of mine. So I'm gonna look at their API, maybe do something on how crowded my local tube station is.
There's always an audience for every type of viz. I've learned that over the years. So it's been really great talking to you, Trea, on your amazing Ireland literature landscape. I learned a lot about the cultural history and richness of it. And I'll definitely check out some of the places that you talked about. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see everyone at the next episode.
Thank you.